Now, in the market with so many pro level controllers, I was a little skeptical when ECHTPOWER reached out to me and they told me they had a controller that will offer pro level experience at a budget price. Now, even though this video isn't sponsored, they did go ahead and send out this controller for me to take a look at. And after using this controller for a few weeks, I have to say I was kind of surprised. And also, this controller might be the controller I use as my default PC controller. Now, right out the box, you'll notice that this controller does have a very Xbox style feel to it. Even though this controller doesn't work on the Xbox, it still has that feel and vibe. Now, this controller is more so for your PC, your Nintendo Switch 1 and 2, and mobile devices, Android and iOS. Now, with that being the case, the controller at no point in time feels cheap. It doesn't feel like $200 worth of a controller that I usually use, but it doesn't feel extremely cheap either, like a $30 controller. Now, this controller price point does come in at about $70, but the controller is on sale right now for about 50 bucks. So I'll make sure I include the link down below if you guys want to hurry up and pick it up while it's on sale. But this controller is about $50 as of right now. Now, the other thing to keep in mind too is this controller is surprisingly light. Maybe too light for some people. It's actually lighter than a standard Xbox controller. So if you want a controller with a little bit more heft and weight to it, this one doesn't quite give you that. It feels almost as light as a feather. So that may be good for long play sessions, on top of the fact that on the back of it, the grips actually feel pretty good. I actually had no problem with it. Again, it's not any premium level grips, but it actually still feels pretty good when I use it normally. Now, on top of all of that, the controller does have a swappable D button. It actually comes with 2 in the box. So you can go ahead and swap out the D buttons depending on what type of game you're playing. It does have one that's more traditional for fighting games, or one to me that seems to be more casual. The thing that I really do like is it does have a nice click to it as well. On top of the D-pad being swappable, the faceplate on the controller is swappable as well. So if you want to go ahead and change up the style, the vibe, you can go ahead and pop that off and put a different faceplate on top of it, which I did like. But the one thing that really surprised me was the fact that the A, B, X, and Y buttons on the front of the controller, not only do they light up, but it gives this really cool vibe. When you look at it directly and you turn the controller side to side, it actually looks like you're looking down a hallway. It gives that nice, cool, futuristic look, but it doesn't put too much RGB out there. So if you're not someone that wants a lot of RGB, it's pretty simple, it's pretty sleek, and it is a nice change up personally. Now, how it affects battery life, I have no clue, but it does seem to look really cool when you're using it. When you take the faceplate off, it actually has a swappable button layout. So if you swap it to the X setting, which in my opinion means Xbox, even though it doesn't work on Xbox, but when you swap it to the X setting, that gives you the Xbox layout, even though it's for PC, and then you can swap it to the S setting and that'll give you the Nintendo Switch layout. I cannot tell you how many times that I was using a controller that worked on both devices and I would get confused because I'm so used to the Xbox layout, but I was using Nintendo Switch buttons. So I really like that you have the option to swap them very easily back and forth. Now, I wish I didn't have to take the faceplate off to get to that, but that is just one thing. Once you take it off and swap it off, you don't really have to worry about it till you go back to another system. So again, small gripe, not the end of the world. Now, as far as battery life goes, the controller does state that it can go about 15 hours. Personally, I noticed something a little bit closer to 10. It could be because of the rumble and it could be because of the lights turned on, the front facing buttons, but I noticed something more closer to 10 hours worth of battery life personally. And speaking of the rumble, I'll say that the controller has relatively strong rumble, which can be a good thing and also a bad thing. As far as the rumble goes, you are going to feel that immersion if you actually care about something like that. But if you're playing something like a first-person shooter, that can sometimes get in the way because of how strong the rumble actually feels. Sometimes a little bit overpowering when trying to aim down sights or anything like that. So that's something that you also may want to keep in mind when it comes to this controller. It's super light with a very strong rumble. But again, unless you're playing competitive online shooters, that probably won't bother you that much. Pretty much any other game, I didn't really notice any issue with those two things combined. All right, guys, so just a quick cutaway here for a minute. I was editing the video and there was something really important that I forgot to bring out, and that's the technology and the sticks that this controller uses. Now, this controller uses something called TMR sticks. Now, if you guys are familiar with Hall Effect sticks, it's like that, but better. See, with Hall Effect sticks, it uses magnets instead of using physical contact on the controller, so you don't have to worry about stick drift happening as quickly. Because something's not physically moving on the controller, is all magnetic, you can use the controller significantly longer before the controller goes out, or you have it where you're playing a game and your camera starts slowly moving this way or that way. But with TMR, not only does it help with not getting stick drift so quickly, it also has less power draw for the controller, but even better than that, at least in my opinion, it gives you better accuracy. So when you're playing a game, it's more precise than it would be with a regular controller or even with Hall Effects. So if you're playing things like first-person shooters and things like that, you would have much more accuracy than you would with other controllers. So Again, something that's really important that I wanted to make sure I included in this video so you guys know exactly what you're getting when you open this thing out the box. All right, back to the rest of the video. So also included in the box is the smart charging dock. And what makes it smart is the fact that once you put it on the dock, it charges the controller up to a certain point, and then once it's there, it dials the power back. And the reason why that's so important is because once the controller hits 100%, it's not going to be still sending full power to the controller. It's going to send a lot less, and that should actually give you less wear and tear on your battery, which will extend the battery life of the controller across the board. So that's actually a really nice, cool feature to have. And the aesthetic of the controller looks really nice. It looks very sleek to just sit up there. Now, another downside to the controller having that strong vibration is that when I did dock the controller and it sunk up, it was a pretty strong vibration where I felt my desk move a little bit, which again, that's not like a big problem. It just emphasizes how strong the vibration can kind of be on this controller. Again, I really wish they would dial that back a little bit. If there's a setting to do that, that would be great. I just don't know about it. Now, also, this controller does support a 1000 hertz polling rate, meaning it can send data inputs from the controller to your console or PC 1000 times per second. And the reason why that's so important is, again, when you're playing something like a first-person shooter, it's going to give you a leg up on people that are using more standard controllers or using the 120 hertz controller. So your response is going to be a lot faster than potentially the next guy. And in a lot of these pro controllers, 1000 hertz seem to be the norm. This controller is supported on PC, all the switches, so the Switch 1, the OLED, and the Switch 2, and it also works on your mobile devices. What's cool about this is this controller is cheaper than a pro level controller that Nintendo makes. I think their controller is about $80. Again, this controller is $70, but you can get it on sale for $50. Not trying to really sell you on that, but I'm just letting you know that if you're in the market for a pro level controller that you can kind of switch between all of your devices and not lock to one platform, that is a potential advantage for you because it's cheaper and it works across the board. So just something to keep in mind. Now, also on the back controller, you'll find a few things. One is the adjustable travel triggers. So pretty much if you're playing something like a first person shooter, you can go ahead and switch the back of the controller where it allows you to hold the trigger all the way down for something like that driving game like Forza, for example. Or if you're playing something like Battlefield 6 or a first person shooter game, you can go ahead and shorten that travel speed if you want rapid fire shooting or anything like that. So it does give you those options there, which is actually really cool. You also have mappable buttons at the bottom as well. So if you want to go ahead and map some buttons on the back of it to give you more of an edge when playing, you do have that option for it. Now, potential drawback of this controller, if you plan on using it with any of the Nintendo Switches, it doesn't support NFC or Amiibo support. So if you're using anything like Amiibos or NFC, it's not going to work with this controller. Just keep that in mind, as well as there's no capture button on here as well. So the new Switch 2 does have that capture button that you can use. You're not going to be able to use that on this controller as well. You're going to have to still get up and press the button on the Nintendo Switch. Again, overall, everything else about the controller works great with the Switch. That's just something to kind of keep in mind. Now, other things to keep in mind too is when using the 2.4 dongle adapter or using a wired connection, I did sometimes notice the controller be less responsive. That didn't happen all the time, but there were some times when playing online, I did seem to notice a little bit of a lag between my inputs and also it appearing on the screen. Again, I would say out of using the controller for hours and hours, it probably happened every other hour, something like that. Very, very rare, and it was very brief and short. But if you wanted to consistently be fast paced all the time, this controller will at some time slow up, but not often enough where most people probably notice it. You probably won't even notice it. And also for the additional D-pad, it'll be really nice if they gave you somewhere to put it. Like there's no case this controller comes in, and on the smart dock, there's nowhere I can put the additional D-pad. It'd be nice if there was like an opening at the bottom where I could kind of stick some of the stuff in so I don't lose it. And because of that, it's just sitting on my desk where it probably is going to get lost over time. But you know, again, these are little small gripes. At the end of the day, with all the features that this controller has compared to other controllers on the market, this one's really good, especially for the price. If I personally was going to rate this controller on a scale from 1 to 10, I would probably put it somewhere around an 8.3. Now, the reason I would say that is because, again, the price, and it feels really good. It doesn't feel cheap at all. It just feels very light. So if you take lightness as cheap, then yeah, you'll have a problem with it. But as far as the actual feel of the controller, the quality, and I've been like really playing a lot of like competitive online stuff, and I've been putting this controller through its paces, and I haven't really noticed any real big issues with that. Anyways, I think for the price that it's at right now, the $50, this controller is a great deal. Let me know what you guys think, and if there's another controller that you want me to check out, comment that down below in the comments and let me know. And again, this controller will be in the description if you guys want to pick up. Anyways, thanks so much for sticking around and watching this video, and as always, I'll catch you all in the next one. See ya.